Good evening, good evening, good evening. We are back with another episode of Chit Chat Podcast. And I'm your host, Shadana. I will be having my co host come on here shortly. JD, if you can go ahead and bring the co hosts on so we can collaborate on this episode today. Hi, Tequila.
Hey girl, how are you?
I am good. I am good. I'm excited. I wanted to do this episode because the month of June, we're going to have a special guest, an author and a love coach who's going to be coming on doing some love series for us
Mhm.
for the podcast. And I figured this will be a good kickoff for us to start like our love series later in the month with him. Um, you know, to kind of kick some conversations going and some things that people probably want to discuss, and then they'll be able to discuss some things further with him when he starts his episodes and his coaching and the things that he's going to bring with his collaboration. But I'm really excited. We're going to start posting his information in the next week. We just got his bio and all that kind of stuff. So Jada's getting that together. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Awesome. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it as well.
Yeah. He has a book out. So he's pretty excited about it. He figured, like I want to put this to the test with your audience, and you know, he trying to put me to the test, but I don't know about that being in the hot seat yet, the
Oh,
love
look,
hot
you
seat
know
yet.
that's right. So, look, if nothing else, nothing wrong with a little collaboration. So
Right, right,
yeah.
right. So that's what we had to look forward to the latter part of the month. But today's episode, sober love. Um, I know that we have often talked about love and relationships and different situation when it comes to relationships,
Mhm.
but we kind of tiptoe around different things when it comes to like the toxic relationships and things of that nature. But you know, do people really treasure like a sober love? Like, do people live on the high of the toxicity of relationships now? Because you hear so many people talk about the drama and the different things that they endure in relationships. Now it's just like, are there even sober moments in love now? Like, are people just really thriving in love and enjoying the peace and the tranquility of, connecting with that one person or your person or whatever? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about sober love, what's your thought when you first heard the title sober love?
So when I think of sober love, of course, I just think of it as less intoxicating, less drama, just steady and calm interactions, generally speaking, throughout the relationship. So that's my perception of it. Um, and it's interesting. It's interesting because, like you said, we often, talk about the toxicity in relationships. So, yeah, I'm excited about diving into the notion of sober love.
Right, right. And I just been thinking about this. I've been on like this healing journey. And so in the process of my journey, I know that I'm in a place right now like I don't want to deal with certain things anymore. Like, I just want to be in a place where peace resides and that I can connect with my person not only on a level intimacy, but a level where we're friends. Like, I mean, I want to have that total wholeness with my person, that total connection, that chemistry with my person where we're connecting on so many levels. That intimacy is beyond the walls of the bedroom, that what I'm saying, that we're reading and feeling each other and our energies are connected.
Yeah.
I want that type of love. And I it probably sound like crazy how people are like, oh, you just love. But, I love the fact that, people have experienced like genuine love. And because, I think of love in that kind of capacity, I want to be able to experience that because I know I have it in me to give it.
Yeah.
That I want to be able to experience it with someone. And so that's why I'm like, I'm excited. I was like, I want to give people hope. Like, let's get past all the drama and all that kind of stuff. Cause life is so short.
It is.
We want to enjoy our life with somebody for the best, the rest of our life. So we want to have, the best time with that person if we're going to spend the rest of our life with that person. So I think that's important. And and not to knock, the things that people endure during relationships, because you're gonna have those bumps and things in the road that comes along with relationships and marriages and all those things. That's gonna happen. Not to say everything, because perfection is not something that's gonna be in any relationship.
Right. Even the sober, relationships. That's what I was thinking. It came to mind as you were speaking, like, hey, challenges are inevitable. And even, in sober love, you have those challenges. But I think the difference is, how you navigate those challenges when you're in a toxic relationship, as opposed to, being in a relationship that's, filled with sober love.
Right. I was reading something online, and it says, survive love quotes on surviving and emphasize love and ability to love are essential to surviving difficult times. It provides strength, courage, hope, helping individuals endure hardships. So, like, you want to be able to be with somebody that that y'all can endure some things together. Y'all can go through some things, and then when y'all come out of those things together, y'all looking at each other like, I don't want to do this with nobody else but you.
But yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and it ain't one of those cat and dog fight type of situation where by the time you get done, both of y'all looking rough, you tired, you exhausted, and you can't stand each other at the end. It's like, we got to get past, going through the motions of those relationship turmoil, and try to get to a place of where we can compromise on things. And I'm guilty of that too, because I've been in relationships where I felt like I want things my way. I'm not trying to give in to certain things or whatever. But now that I've had reflection time during my healing journey, it gives me an opportunity to reflect on the things that I contributed to things in past relationships that didn't work. And then me providing the opportunity to correct those things before I navigate into another relationship.
Yeah.
So that way I don't bring that added or that carried baggage into something else, because unhealed trauma, unhealed baggage, or that's how we carry that stuff from one relationship to the next, because we're not confronting those issues.
Right. I think that is important for us to understand, though, that as we're navigating relationships, and it's, whether you consider it a toxic one or one that is, filled with sober love, I think that there has to be a commitment to long-term growth between the parties. And so I think for me, what that means is that, like, we meet and we have our differences. And because of our differences, is going to be, a great likelihood that we're going to face challenges, because two different people, two different backgrounds, a host of differences, but we've decided to join together. I think the commitment to growing together is important, because it means that through challenges that you face, whether it's an individual challenge of yours that you may need my help in getting through and navigating, or something that I'm faced with. If we're committed to growing together, then I think then that's what we have done is fostered the idea of sober love by sticking it out, through good and bad, through good and bad.
I had reposted something the other day where Taraji had posted probably like a month ago, and she said, I am not gonna date a person's unhealed son again. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt that thing because sometimes we enter things, or we enter situations that we're not equipped, and we're not capable, because people come masked, and then they provide us the false, you know um representative of who they think we want them to be,
Yeah.
instead of giving us their natural, who this is who I am,
Mm-hmm.
but love me through these false
Mm-hmm.
situations, and give me an opportunity to get right, or do right,
Yeah.
whatever. And they don't give you that opportunity. Instead, they mask things or whatever, and give you a false narrative, and then you find things out later after you're going through so much discord, and toxicity, and different things like that. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and the toxic stuff start happening, because we're not entering things where we're not dealing with the healing, or we're not dealing with the trauma, prior to moving on. I posted something last night where it says men don't reflect, they just replace.
Mm.
And um and i and I said that out of experience, because I dated somebody that does that, and I see the pattern that he does. He don't give himself time to reflect anything. He just move on quickly to somebody else, because if he takes the time to reflect on things, I think it would really bother him. So instead of doing that, he just move on to somebody else or somebody new, so that way it validates, here's somebody else that wants me, so I can just go to somebody that wants me, instead of dealing with the issues that are underlining, that has carried on one relationship to the next.
And you know what I kind of like, you know, what I one of the things that I've thought about people who move like that is that like those are the type people who are of the mindset that like they're not willing to change. Like I'm not willing to change me, so instead of changing me, I'll replace you with someone else who I feel is better suited, better capable, more passive, more willing to be accommodating to me as I am. That's what I kind of think about people like that. It's like they, unfortunately, they're just not willing to grow. And like I said, you have to have that commitment to growing, because to just accept someone as they are, or to even just be okay with being yourself and not willing to change, that's not a good reflection of someone who is committed to a relationship. Rather, they're committed to the idea of themselves. And so yeah, I think that that's just someone who's not willing to change who they are.
Yeah, and I think it's such a selfish mentality to have,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
when you talking about love, um, self-love should be the first business of love. And if you're not providing yourself with that first, and then how you're expecting to love somebody else properly if you're not loving yourself first. And so so not giving yourself the opportunity to deal with some of the things that you have issues with, that you're dealing with, that you're hiding, that you're um I think it's selfish. It's selfish, and and no matter who you move on to, it's selfish to the point that the new person is not even fair to the new person, because they don't know what they don't know what they about to deal with. They gonna get a false representative in the beginning, but eventually that real true face and the real true character and behavior is gonna show up. And so and a lot of times I think, people see relationships, and they think, like, oh, those are goals. We hear that all the time, like, oh, those are goals, but we never know what those people are dealing with behind closed doors.
You don't. You don't know what people are going through. I think that and I don't know if maybe you might have noticed this too, but like I think that one thing I've noticed about people who like exemplify like selfish love is that like their relationships don't last long. Have you ever noticed that?
Right. They're
They
going,
don't last.
look, like my mama used to say, pillar to
A little
post.
post. Right.
Mama used to say that, honey, they go from pillar to post.
Mine too. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
from pillar to post. They don't last long. It's like, okay, you're connecting with people, but it's like it's not grounded. It's not grounded because it does not last long at all. So it's definitely probably not meaningful, to the parties. Meaningful to you, to the person, to the selfish person, but not meaningful to the party. So that's why it don't last, because it takes two, remember? It
Right.
takes two.
Right. And then you have to, it's too much energy of pretending and putting on.
Yeah.
Just be your authentic self, because when you got to put on the extra to be something that you're not, or to
Yes.
be something that you're trying to be, or whatever, and you're not yet there to be,
Mhm.
give that person an opportunity to say, hey, nobody's perfect, and because we're already here, involved with each other, let's figure out a way to work through this, to get you some growth, get you somewhere that you can get to a better place, or whatever the case may be. You never know how people can, help, people in situations like that, but they don't give them opportunity, because they're masking everything,
Yeah.
and they're covering everything, and they're hiding everything, and they're so caught up in pretending and portraying and giving the false representative, and people are being, fooled. They're being bamboozled, and people are like, you playing in my face.
Right.
no
Right.
and I think that's crazy, because our hearts are not battlefields. So, and I think when people look at it like that, because your heart or your mind is not a battlefield, and I think when people look at things like that, they should take that in consideration,
Yeah.
because how literally how you treat people, and your actions on how you do things, plays an important role
Yeah.
in relationships.
Absolutely. It definitely ensures like emotional stability. And
Hmm.
you need that. You need that in order for your relationship to thrive for sure.
Right. Right. All
Right.
right. And
Mhm.
since we're talking about emotional stability, you know, um, mindfulness, being mindfulness of that, you think it's good when people are meeting, when they're dating, that they should talk about, you know, mental health and those kind of things early.
I personally don't. I think that, you know, talking about those things early are not off the table, but I wouldn't necessarily say that like it's on the table for me. I feel like that's something that I kind of like tend to want to feel my way through to see where the relationship is going, and if I find that, this might be someone that I'm growing with and we're going forward together, then of course, I'll open up the dialogue and present some of those things, because some things I feel like are just super duper personal, and my mental health and well-being, my kids, my finances. It's just certain things that I feel like, if unless there's a need for you to know, there's no reason for me to just openly tell you. So that's
Right.
my take on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, but I think at a certain point, when the relationship hits a certain point, I think conversations need to be had. But sometimes that never happens because something either triggers something, or something happens in the relationship where it sparks that conversation, or it
Mm,
sparks the need to have that conversation. And and so people are put, in situation where they're like, now we got to have this conversation, or I didn't know he or she was crazy like that
yeah,
thing. And then you're looking at it like, well, maybe he or she is not crazy, maybe you triggered, or something you did or said triggered something within them. And so that's a conversation that and speaking of that, communication is very important.
absolutely.
You're talking about sober love, because sober love, there's no how would I say it? There's no way of not having communication. Like, accountability is important. Having that trust.
Yeah.
And sober love is having that trust with your person. Like, you
Mhm.
guys are affirming each other with your actions and your abilities to connect and have that chemistry with each other. And so there's no way communication can't be a part of that.
That's
And,
true.
and accountability and trust is all part of that responsibility of it. So
That's true. I agree. But I do think though, like, to piggyback off of what I was saying, I do feel like if there are things, in my medical history or mental health history that would personally, like, affect or impact the person I'm dealing with, or could personally impact them, or it could potentially show up at some point, like, prior to us getting too personal in the relationship, I feel like I would definitely disclose that information. I feel like it's pertinent, to always be open and honest and forthcoming about things that could impact, the other party. So I would definitely, share and disclose that information in a situation where I feel like it was something that could impact them.
yeah, I had a situation before where um what prompted our conversation was I had an anxiety attack.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of scared the person. And so because it scared him or whatever, even though it scared him, he triggered it. He triggered it, but it scared him. But it prompted a conversation for us to have, a much needed conversation for us to have, because he didn't know that my anxiety would get to that level.
Yeah.
And so it kind of scared him, but at the same time, it it put him on notice with some of the things he said or done to create boundaries, so that he doesn't, it doesn't provide triggers.
Right.
And so, boundaries is another thing that I want to bring up, how recognizing boundaries, how that can change a situation, a relationship, especially like when you're trying to have sober love. Um, you know, what you think about that, how important you think boundaries is for that.
I think that, boundaries are extremely important. It's basically a line of respect. It's a line that once crossed, you deviate away from course, and then you start to tread on the lines of disrespect. So I find that, boundaries are extremely important in sober love.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you talking about things that you got to, create to provide a safe space
Mhm.
for you and your partner. you know. And so when you're trying to provide that safe space, you know, boundaries, you know, I wrote something down where it says, distractions distractions often come dressed in disrespect. So you have to
Mm.
create boundaries because distractions often come dressed in disrespect.
Mhm.
And I've experienced that in relationships,
Mhm.
you know, where you try to give leeway of people having, you know, you know, other people in their lives or whatever, and those boundaries got crossed. And and the reason why those boundaries got crossed because they came with disrespect. And so
Mhm.
when it comes with disrespect, that's why it's important to have those boundaries and talk about what those boundaries are establishing and
Mhm.
how both parties can understand like what that boundary mean and why it's in place kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that it fosters you know, a sense of mutual respect whenever you have boundaries in place. I definitely, especially when you respect them and honor your boundaries. I
Oh
feel,
yeah.
you know, you're gonna definitely foster some mutual respect, you know, between your, you know, yourself and your partner with boundaries in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So um I had mentioned earlier I was talking about affirming each other, you know, how affirming each other, you know, to provide that sense of security.
Hmm.
But you know, sometimes when that doesn't happen, you know, you have, you know, um people get detached,
Yeah.
or the opposite of that, people are codependent on others where they feel like, you know, they can't, you know, do without that person or can't be, you know, it's just they got to have or be with that person all the time. They don't have a sense of, you know, you know, being by themselves or being away, you know, living without this kind of person or whatever. So what's your take on like having that codependency and then, you know, and being detached, you know, having a sense of detachment?
Um, I think it really just depends on the parties in the relationship. You know, I think that people in love have to decide for themselves like what works for their relationship. I don't think there's just like a general opinion of mine that, you know, codependency um you know, is better or worse. I think that it just depends on the needs of the parties. I do feel like, you know, it's important to recognize though that there are consequences, you know, to being codependent.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I think that, you know, accepting, you know, the responsibility of knowing what you're getting yourself into, and if that's what you choose to do, then I don't see, you know, anything wrong with it. Kind of like to each his own when it comes to, you know, when it comes to that.
Yeah, but we hear a lot about trauma bonding, and I think a lot of people tend to kind of correlate trauma bonding with codependency
Mhm.
because um, you know, a lot of relationships are built on people being so um, connected because
Mhm.
they're trauma bonding.
Mhm.
And you know, and so because you know, so and so went through abandonment child issues, you know, or abandonment issues when they were younger and never dealt with those issues. Now they got to now they got to, you know, jump from pillar to post.
Right.
They can't deal with being by themselves,
Mhm.
having no alone time, you know, dealing with their singleness, and you know, and learning how to love on themselves because you know they got to validate themselves because they never dealt with that abandonment issue, so now they don't want to be alone, so
So
now
they
they're,
find themselves in that little cycle of
yeah,
conflict and
like that
yeah.
hamster wheel. They just want to, they want to keep moving to the next person because the
Mhm.
moment they feel like they're alone by themselves, it takes them back to that abandonment issue, that trauma that they never dealt with. And there's a book called Our Body Keeps Account. And so your body reminds you of the things that you're holding in, that you don't oppress, whether it's grief, trauma, or whatever. So something triggers that in your nervous system, it's gonna let you know. And so people tend to kind of be codependent or trauma bond with somebody because they don't want to deal with themselves or face their issues when they're by themselves. So it's just easier to attach to somebody.
Yeah. So. I think those, definitely like the idea of them probably having like a shared experience with someone else kind of like in and of itself deepens, their relationship and their connection in a way, but that's the reason why I think that the individual healing aspect is so important, like to individually heal before you even try to connect with someone. I feel like that's the reason why that's so important, because, growth, it is personal, but like when you join with someone else, you're personally growing, but together. So yeah, it can be a chaotic mess, if you don't work on that healing prior to connecting and resulting in those trauma bonds that you're speaking of.
Yeah. When I tell healing, I thought maybe going through healing prior to my last situation, I thought this healing was like, okay, it's just something I got to get over and I'll get through it or whatever. But I think this actual last time, I'm actually doing the work necessary.
Right.
To work on me, because I don't want bitterness to sink in, because I feel like if bitterness sink in, it's going to keep me from having peace. And I don't want that. I don't want none of that to take peace, because that's my ultimate goal, to be in a place with my person at peace, enjoying genuine love, at the level that we are giving it to each other. And I don't, so I was like, I don't want bitter. I want to uproot that. I want to make sure that it's out of me, not in me or whatever. So when I move on to my next person, they getting like a whole like revives me, a rejuvenate, a better, you want to make sure that your next person get a better version of you than the last person had.
I love that for you.
Yeah, girl.
I love that for you, girl. That's that self-care though.
Yeah.
Self-care.
I be telling myself all the time, I be like, honey, the man that gets you, honey, he ain't gonna be able to take all this love you about to give him.
I know that's right. Like you bring it all the way together.
Honey, he gonna be like, ooh, where is this? I'm like, honey, look, this been manifesting,
Yes. And then going into it, you'll be so much better able to establish those healthy boundaries from the beginning. So you're not, like revisiting some of the past traumas and things that may have triggered you before. Like, go ahead. You already know what it looks like. So establish those boundaries early on.
Yeah. You get clarity too. You get the clarity, like, this is actually what I'm looking for. This is what I'm expecting, whatever. Let's have this conversation, and then let's meet in the middle, how we're going to make this work, for us, if this is what we're trying to pursue. Because at the end of the day, like, we're trying to get to that safe space and love, that sober love. We ain't trying to be all, ain't nobody got time to be doing all that fussing and fighting, and it's too much of that going on. It's too much energy for that too.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, that clarity that you speak on. So that clarity, do you think that it comes by way of like experiences, or do you think like it might be an age and maturity thing that's kind of like, opening your eyes? And because I feel like I find myself lately saying like, like, dang, it's almost like I know what I want. Like, it's like, you can
Right.
reflect on times where you may have been uncertain and you were grateful for what you got. But then it's the difference between appreciating something good that you got versus knowing exactly what you want and then recognizing it. So, do you think that that kind of comes with the experiences, from like our toxic relationships, or do you think that that just is a part of like our growth and maturity, that we're, your eyes are being open to like knowing exactly what it is and identifying, being able to identify what it is you want?
I think it's both. I mean, because hindsight is always 2020.
Right.
When you're going through the growth or the healing process, but it's definitely through experiences
Mhm.
because you ain't got to touch a hot stove twice to know that the stove is hot.
Right. That's
So I know that I'm not trying to go back. The last heartbreak I had, I'm not trying to deal with that kind of heartbreak again.
okay.
And so, and the things that I endured through it, I know that there's a lot of things that I won't put myself in that position to do again. And not to say it was a bad thing, but I'm not gonna put myself in a position to be be that vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the clarity that I had was, I'm not gonna allow myself to have unnecessary stress because I'm taking on so much of somebody else's, you know, life and the things that they have going on, and and they're not so much concerned about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and it's consuming me because I'm more concerned about the relationship or whatever, and that person whole agenda is selfish intent. Like,
Yeah.
it's all about themselves.
Yeah.
And now that I see that, I'm never going to put myself in that situation again. You know, a lot of that clarity came back, hindsight,
Mm-hmm.
seeing it from those experiences and be like, never again.
Yeah. And then
you know.
you'll be able to see those little red flags. Moving
Hmm.
forward, you'll see the little red flags that'll remind you like, oh, go the opposite way. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Hit that alarm. Boop boop.
Yeah. Right.
Like, you're like, can't do it.
Right.
But it do feels good, I think, when you process your pain or you go through the healing process. And a lot of people say, well, you should try to because I had a lot of people tell me you should your healing process should be private. And I said,
Mhm.
because I posted a few things or whatever, and they kind of knew, like, oh, she must have went through a breakup or whatever. And so I had a few people tell me that. And I said, I get what you're saying, but if I'm posting my person, publicly, and when we're together, then what's wrong with me sharing the fact that, because we're not together, that, I'm heartbroken, or it's a heartbroken situation or whatever. I was like, it's a real thing. So, I mean, if I'm sharing the happy moments, let me share the not so happy moments.
Yeah, you're like, if I'm gonna be, open, and if I'm going to, disclose something, then hey, why am I being selective about what aspect of what we have going on
Right.
disclosing? Like, you're not trying to be fake about it at all. You're trying to be all the way transparent, and so
Right.
I can respect that. I definitely can respect that. People gotta, realize that, someone else's way of maneuvering and handling things are not your way. So I don't think it's a right or wrong way to healing. It's whatever, you see fit, and whatever brings you peace. I
Yeah.
think is what matters most. So if it means that you share it, post it, then hey, that's what you need to do.
Yeah, yeah. Now when I do remarry, it's
You
gonna
want to be private.
look,
What you being private for now? Why you want to get all private now? You
like
been
what?
look, you been disclosing and you been
Right.
posting with look. What you don't let nobody stop you.
Look, they're gonna be like, we didn't even know she date nobody. Yep, I'm telling you, because look, I don't dealt with that too. I don't dealt with all the snooping and the distractions and all that kind of stuff. So So the next time y'all just pop out, y'all gonna be like, I'm gonna just change my name on Facebook, and y'all gonna be like,
Nothing wrong with that, honey.
right.
I see. I see.
But when you was talking about growth, one of the notes I wrote down on here is about celebrating growth in a relationship, like how you set that couples need to celebrate milestones, you know, in relationships. And I think a lot of people don't do that. Like, you know, sometimes if there was infidelity or if there was things that, you know, a couple had to get through or get over, and, you know, and they had to do therapy or they had to do certain things to kind of, you know, maneuver through those situations, you know, they need to celebrate those milestones because, you know, when you celebrate those milestones, it creates a habit of not going back. Like it's kind of like it's like a memorial. Look at that, like we ain't trying to go back there. So let's celebrate where we are, you know, look where we on came from, kind of thing, so that way we don't try to go back. And so when you was talking about growth, that was one of the things that I had wrote down. Celebrating growth in relationships, especially when it comes to milestones and different things
Yeah.
that couples overcome.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. I never thought about it. Um, Especially like in terms of like small wins and small gains. You know,
Yeah.
I think that when you're in sober love, I think that like I was saying earlier, like, you know, there are challenges. So there are always going to be challenges. So that means that there are always going to be like something to overcome and a win to celebrate. So I guess yeah, I never thought about it, but I like that.
Mm-hmm. Be
Right.
like, look, but we ain't argued all week. It's been
I know, right?
we ain't had no argument. Look, come
Yeah,
on, let's go on.
right. Yeah, I
You
like
know,
that.
celebrate the milestones.
Right.
You know, look, you've been on your job all week, baby.
Yes. Yes. I
You know,
like
celebrate those milestones.
that.
Let them know when they doing a good job. Let them know when
Mhm.
they on top of their game. So yeah, so that, you know, that helps the relationship to continue to grow. Because, you
Mhm.
know, anytime you get praises and you know, accolades or stuff like that, you want to continue to do it. You know, oh,
Definitely.
she liked that, let me continue to doing what I need to do, or he liked that, let me continue doing what I was doing, you know,
Right.
because he enjoyed that. So you know, so those moments are important, well, for
Right.
sober love.
Right. I like that.
But what was my other, oh, it says oh, I put on here prayer. You know, I was gonna have to add prayer in there.
Mhm.
When we was talking about affirmation and mindfulness in
Mhm.
relationships, I also put prayer. Prayer is vital because speaking life over you and your future partner or partner is
Mhm.
like, you just don't know how big that is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when you're dating somebody and they may not be as spiritual as you, or they may not be as equipped on, you know, spiritually as you, but when you are and you cover them, I
Mhm.
think, to me, because, you know, I'm a spiritual person,
Mhm.
one of the most attractive things for me is a man who can cover me and provide for me. I think, you know, that is like an attraction for me all by itself. If I
Mhm.
know, if I know he's covering me, like he covered me in prayer and he's protecting me like that, you know, girl,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm
It's
about to
different.
the moon and back with that joker, because I think like that are important to me. Like
Yeah.
those kind of things are important to me. Like to see somebody covering you like that, or if I know that if I'm sick or I got something going on, I'm just not myself, or they feel like, I got you kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They can cover me. I'm not the, one that's just doing all the praying and the covering
Yeah.
and the spiritual aspects of the relationship. So,
Yeah, definitely prayer is needed. I think that it definitely helps solidify like the foundation
hmm
relationship. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I'm moving forward because, I've been, doing all my healing or whatever and manifesting what I want. And because I keep telling God, I ain't asking, I keep telling him, I say, God, my next relationship is gonna be my husband. My next relationship is gonna be my marriage. And so I don't have another, what's your favorite color, what's your favorite food, what you like to do.
Right.
I don't have no more of that.
Right.
I ain't got time. So when he say hello, I say hello or whatever, and we connect like that, I'm gonna know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm look, I'm ready to, and I'm like, and if God say 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, y'all married, boom.
You own it. It don't matter how long it's.
I have been in preparation mode because I know, I knew exactly what I wanted in my last relationship. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't happen, but I know that the things that I took from there or whatever, and going through this process or whatever, a healing or whatever, I'm like, honey, this husband of mine he don't even know what, girl, he about to fly in every day.
Look, girl, like sounds like you in full recognition of your needs and your
Girl,
desires for that love that you about to have going on. That sober love affair you about to have.
I'm sober.
Up
Love.
next.
We gonna be so it's gonna be sober in love, and we gonna be drunk in love. Like, yeah.
I know that's right.
Yes, I am so excited about that. But yeah, because been writing down my stuff, like, in my little journal thing, exactly what I'm expecting of my person, and, writing down the affirmations. My husband will be a faithful husband. He'll be a trustworthy husband. He'll be a provider. Saying those things, affirming those things now. I'm not waiting till he in front of my face.
Yeah.
You know, affirming those things. I'm affirming those things now. And so when I do my prayers at nighttime, I'm praying for him, even though he's not in place yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, when he gets in place, he know that he's already been covered.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, God, I ain't playing around, because this is it. Like, I ain't trying to do that. I ain't
Like
trying
I
to.
already told you, God, what it's gonna be, and that's what I'm expecting.
Right. Look, this your girl. Look, I'm telling you. Say we have not, can we ask not? I don't been asking you.
Right.
I know what I want. So I'm just telling you right now. Look, this is what I need you to make happen, because
Mhm.
I'm writing it down. I'm making it plain. But yeah, I am so but I hope that people are seriously looking at what it takes to have, like, a sober love, the efforts, living a holistic life, and the positive connection of love and respect,
Mhm.
and the things that you know love is action. So anytime that we see our purpose in being with someone, and trying to connect with someone on that kind of level, then our action should back all of that.
Mhm.
Everything that we do toward that person or with that person should speak for us, even if we don't even open our mouths.
That's right.
So because love is action. So, but yeah. So any last minute thoughts there?
No. I enjoyed the segment today. Even, picked up a jewel or two from you. So it's interesting. But yeah, like wishing you some sober love, girl.
Oh, thank you.
Look, no drama, no toxicity. You might have a little bit, because that's gonna just a little drama gonna really help you appreciate the beautiful times in the relationship, but just a little bit of drama,
Yeah.
here
I
and there.
got,
But
yeah,
just sober
got a
love.
little feistiness in me now. So yeah, it gonna have to take a real one to kind
Yeah.
of that. So
And
but
man, look, and that's what you look, that's what you need. That's
yes, that's what I look. I don't put that down too. I know what it takes to handle me.
that's right.
I know I'm a handful. You know I'm a handful because you create. But you know I'm a handful. Your girl's a handful. You know she's spoiled. She like things her way. But at the end of the day, I will yield and submit to the right man as long as he, he knows what he's doing, and I see, and his actions back up what he's doing. I'm there.
And you're
He,
gonna be just enough. You're gonna be just enough for the right man. Like not too much, not too little. For the right person, girl, you're gonna be just enough.
girl, look, and he about look.
Mhm.
He about to have his kingdom.
I know
Look,
that's
you
right.
your queen, king, and we about to have this
I
kingdom.
know that's right. I know that's right.
Look, look, heaven on earth, baby. Do it. But I appreciate you. Thank you for doing this
Of
segment.
course.
Um,
Of course.
I appreciate the opportunity. I know you come from the marriage side, so you give a lot of nuggets on that side as well. And I appreciate your perspective on that because
Thank you.
that's a lot of sober moments
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, a lot of sober moments, look, can't deny that, there's some toxicity, like I was saying, challenges, they are inevitable, honey. They will come. But, you have to have a commitment
Mm-hmm.
to just seeing it through. And it's important. Boundaries are extremely important to establish. One of the things I attribute to my relationship and marriage dynamic is establishing boundaries. And we did that. We did that like head on from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Establishing a lot of boundaries. And so it just alleviates the gray areas and the I didn't know, and um I didn't think you would have, like, this is what it is. And
Right.
you laying it all out in the beginning so that whenever there's an issue, there are no gray areas to kind of wiggle your way around it or out of it.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's important. Establish boundaries.
It is. It is because we too grown to be sitting out there talking about. Well, I didn't know, or that
I
we
thought you wouldn't mind. Like, wait,
right.
what? Like, what? So
Because I'm
yeah,
always saying, put yourself in my shoes. Would you be okay with if I did this or if I did such and such or whatever? And a lot of times their answer is no. So if their answer is no, then why you think it would be okay for
yeah,
me to accept you doing that?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and as mates, men or women, we have to put ourselves in that situation. If we're doing something, that we know that our partner will not be pleased with or whatever, then we need to put ourselves in their shoes. If my partner knew I was doing this at this moment, will it be acceptable?
And that's the thing. Like, your partner. You should know your partner. If you know your partner, then you should very well know what they would be accepting of, or what they, would not approve of. And so that's the way you should move, according to, it, as if they were right there present with you when you're rendering those decisions that you may have to come back, around and answer to because you didn't make the right decision. Treat it as though they're right there in the same room.
Absolutely. I remember my stepdad used to always tell people, ask Mildred or whatever. Like people used to have to ask my mama everything. You know, he was the man of the house, but he would tell people they would have to ask her. But I didn't understand it till later because out of respect for her in the house, he wanted to make sure if somebody wanted him to use his truck to go move some furniture, go ask Mildred, or whatever. Because if I'm coming to your house to move some furniture, she need to say this, okay.
Girl, nah, that's just Miss Mildred had them boundaries in place.
Hey,
Miss
look,
Mildred didn't play. And
look,
he said, ask Mildred. Miss Mildred did not play, and he already knew that he couldn't come any kind of way with Miss
he,
Mildred. So
and ain't gonna come any kind of look.
he like, you go to it, so I don't have to.
Yeah, go on and ask Mildred, or whatever. So
That's
look,
all
and
right.
I be like, hey, why you gotta ask mama all that stuff? That's his truck. As I got older, now I understand it
Yeah.
because you're in a situation where it's not just you. So you're making a decision that could possibly affect your partner or could possibly be a problem or be problematic to you and your partner. So you have to take all that kind of stuff in consideration. And when you don't, then it can cause problems with your situation. And and we're trying to create sober love and keep sober love
That's all right.
in effect. So we done with all this toxicity. We looking for the good stuff. We want to see all these relationships and marriages thriving and being fruitful.
Yes, we want peace in the place, honey. We want peace
Yes,
in the place.
peace is priceless. I'm like,
Yes.
I am no longer like putting my piece, on discount anymore. Not doing it. So it takes too much energy out of you. So all them energy vampires that want that, bye. So, but I appreciate you doing this segment with me, and as always, I enjoy you as a co-host.
You as well, girl.
Yes,
An amazing host.
thank you, thank you, thank you. So, thank you, Chit Chat Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded um, episode, but we will be back the following Sunday with a new episode. So join us on next Sunday for a new episode of Chit Chat Podcast where we chat all things women. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.